The video is from March 2021 and recently shared with WFAA. Larry Reed is seen gloating, shirtless, over his cellmate in prison as he writhes in pain on the ground. Texas prison officials say Reed had just beat up his cellmate and live-streamed some of it to Facebook via an illegal cell phone. Reed serving an 11-year sentence for murder when this video was taken.
That is a man doing time for murder, standing over a body he just beat down, filming himself smiling about it. And nobody charged him for a thing.
Also looking into this morning, Arlington police have arrested a man in connection with a triple homicide. Police have charged 29-year-old Larry Reed for capital murder.
Same man, 45 days after Texas opened the gate and let him walk out, he murdered 3 people in cold blood. But before we get into Larry Reed's story, let's start with this story. Jacqueline Wilson was 32 years old and was raising 4 kids on her own. She was born on the 16th of January, 1992, up in Huntsville, Texas, and she came up out there in Walker County before life carried her down to Houston. Her mother, Denise Bibbs, described her daughter as one who turned heads and was the life of the party wherever she went.
She's calling my name. I'm going to the streets. Get some more. I'm going to the streets. The streets are calling my name. I'm going to the streets. The streets are calling my name. I'm going.
The 4 kids were Lance, Aaliyah, Jordan, and Cash, and every single account of her life comes back around to them. Now let me put you on the man, because his background is the whole reason this case blew up statewide.
Man, I had to come eat that shit, man. That shit was so good, boy. Man, you gotta come forward with these hoes, man. These hoes, this is the truth, man. God, these hoes the truth. Real truth, man. Ooh, nigga, fat full now. Trying to pour that cup up, baby. Pour that cup up and put that shit on, man.
Howard Devin Ruffin was 39 years old and had been in Jacqueline's life for about 5 years by then. But outside of that relationship, there is almost nothing about him anywhere in public. No work history worth reporting, no interviews, or real trace of a normal life. Just some public search records tying him to Houston and the Walker County area, and a possible high school football listing nobody has ever confirmed as even him.
Don't tell me that you love me when you really don't. Don't say that you gon' ride when you really won't. I wanna hug that shit on. I really don't. Real love, but I know love, that's why my feelings gone. Don't say that I can call when I really can't. Don't say that you be down when you really ain't. You just one of my pride, but shit, I'm not a gang. Your mouth said it, but your heart never felt the same. Nah. Man, it's a very where we living this shit, I'm just speaking fact. They the wrong people, my love, and I wish that I can give it back. I'm the real, just to get you hurt up, get you killed. It seems like love is the new hate, and look, fake is the new real. Suffocated by betrayal, don't know appetite to talk. I don't vent to people no more, cause when they get mad, all they do is talk.
Everything else that exists about Howard Ruffin on paper comes out of a courthouse. Local news did not dance around it either, describing him as a man with a lengthy criminal history and more than one conviction for aggravated assault. And every last one of those cases involved a woman he was dating. Denise Bibbs did not know all of that going in, so she opened her home to this man, and in her own words, she treated him like a son. The relationship was rough from early on, and Bibbs said her daughter had never been in anything that bad before. So she told her over and over to leave, and that it could not get better and could only get worse. Then came October of 2022, and this is where the paper trail turns ugly. Ruffin got hit with a felony that Harris County calls assault of a family member, second offender, and the details inside that court file are hard to sit with. Based on the reporting done on those records, he was driving with Jacqueline in the car when he started punching her in the face with his fists, and when she fought back, he put his hands around her neck and choked her while the car was still moving down the road. She jumped out of a moving car to get away from that man. And I need you to really sit with that for a second, because she looked at the road flying past her door and decided the road was the safer option. She flagged down other drivers and begged for help, and by the time officers reached her, she had bruises all over her body. They carried her to the hospital. She turned down more treatment, and in that moment, she did not want to push the case forward. Prosecutors still asked the court for a protective order on her behalf, and she never got one. Here is the part that turned this into a statewide argument. A felony warrant went out for his arrest. Harris County never picked him up, and that warrant just sat there alive and unserved while Howard Ruffin walked around free like nothing ever happened. He already had a conviction before that one, out of Walker County, for assaulting a family member back around 2021, and for that one, he served 3 days in jail. Then, in the spring of 2023, he got stopped way down in Maverick County, which is out on the border by Eagle Pass, hundreds of miles from Houston. And when they ran his name, that Harris County felony warrant came back on the screen. So they locked him up. Then they turned around and let him go on a $7,500 bond. Reporting on the case says the charge may have been handled down there like a misdemeanor, even though Harris County had it filed as a felony. But the bigger issue is what never happened next. Harris County never informed Maverick County about the arrest, bond, or release. That breakdown between the two counties ran for about 16 months, and for all 16 of them, Howard Ruffin was out here with nobody supervising him, no bond conditions being enforced, and nobody checking on a single thing he did. Harris County finally found out about that bond roughly 1 week before Ruffin made his final move. On the 25th of September 2024, Ruffin stood up in the 182nd Criminal District Court in front of Judge Desane Jones on that 2022 assault charge, and by that point, everybody in the room had his history in front of them. The bond stayed right where it was at $7,500, so it wasn't raised or pulled, and he was released from jail on or around the 30th of September.
Howard Ruffin has a lengthy criminal history.
Multiple convictions for aggravated assault, all involving dating relationships.
Now watch how fast everything else moves. That same week, Jacqueline ended their relationship for good, and on that Monday, a neighbor watched her carrying his belongings out of the apartment and putting them on the curb. She was done with him and was doing the exact thing everybody tells women in her position to do, which is leave. That same neighbor later told ABC 13 about something that had been sitting on her chest, saying that within the last week she heard Ruffin tell Jacqueline, "Okay, I'm going to kill you." Then, on the 1st of October, the night before Ruffin snapped, that same neighbor came through the parking lot at the Willow Green Apartments and saw a man sitting in the dark inside an SUV just watching the building. And she had to walk right past him to get to her door. She said that when he looked up and caught her looking back at him, she rushed off. The neighbor could not put words to the feeling she got, but she knew it was not a good one. So he was posted outside Jacqueline's apartment the entire night before, 2 days out of custody, riding on a bond nobody raised, sitting in the dark watching a woman who had just put his clothes on the curb. The 2nd of October, 2024, at the Willow Green Apartments on Willow Place Drive North, out near FM 1960 and Highway 249 in northwest Harris County. Jacqueline's 4 kids lived in that apartment, and 2 of them had already left for school that morning. So the 2 little ones, about 4 years old and about 6 or 7, were still inside with their mother when a camera nearby started recording the worst 20 seconds of their lives. ABC 13 got hold of that footage, and the whole thing is short enough to explain in one breath. A man walks into the apartment, the door shuts behind him, and you hear his voice say 2 words, "Oh, really?" Then you hear her voice answer him, saying, "Go ahead," and she says it 3 times. Then comes 1 gunshot, then 8 more back to back while she is screaming. And then the man walks out of that apartment and calmly strolls off like he just dropped something off at a neighbor's place. The man's entry to exit was about 20 seconds.
He shot my mom.
Heartbreaking words from a little boy this morning outside the Willow Green apartments. He and his brother inside the second-floor unit just after 8 when this man walks in. Then an argument with their mom.
Oh, really? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
A gunshot, soon followed by 8 more as their target screams in agony. You then see the man walk out and calmly walk away, a mere 20 seconds after he arrived.
What happened after that is the part that will sit on your chest all day. Her little boy, the 6-year-old, ran out of that apartment and made it down to the bus stop where 2 women were standing around waiting for a bus. They asked him about the bus and he told them somebody had shot his mom.
Looking for evidence. They were brought here by those neighbors who called 911 after a child went running to the bus stop saying something unthinkable.
Around 8 this morning, HPD says a woman was shot at this complex. Shortly after, neighbors say they saw one of her kids who missed the bus. The child, they say, told them someone shot his mom.
As soon as he said that, we just took off running, like, show us the apartment where you stay, and then he brought us to the apartment right over there. And we went in there and she was just gasping for air.
Those 2 women took off running behind a 6-year-old who walked them right back to his own front door. And when they got inside, they found Jacqueline Wilson on the floor. She was gasping for air, so they grabbed towels and pressed them down on the gunshot wounds while they called 911. And her mother later said one of the babies sat right there beside her through all of it. None of it was enough, because Houston police rolled up to the complex around 8:05 that morning, and Houston Fire Department paramedics had already found an unresponsive woman inside with multiple gunshot wounds, and she was pronounced dead right there on the scene. 2 women who only came outside to catch a bus that morning ended up with their hands pressed on a dying stranger, and they were shaken afterward to ask reporters to hide their faces because the man who did it was still out there somewhere.
Leading visuals that were still fresh in their minds hours after it happened.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see someone like that. So I just would rather not talk about that part, please.
Neighbors who rushed to her rescue asked us to conceal their identities. The reason being the killer took off after the shooting.
That's what you call somebody who doesn't have a heart, who's heartless, who doesn't care. And I just think, like I said, it's a coward move.
Neighbors say 2 of the women's kids were in the apartment during the shooting. Neither were hurt. 2 other children were at school. After officers arrived, they watched the kids until other families showed up. Comfort, they say, they needed after witnessing something unimaginable.
It's a real heartbreaking situation because they lost their mother. Not just those 2, but her older 2 children. They lost their mother. They no longer have a mother.
One of them said what everybody watching was already thinking, calling it a cowardly move and saying that is what you call a person with no heart. The other one said the line that hurts the most, that those kids are going to be messed up for the rest of their lives because they witnessed the murder, and that she really felt for those children. Homicide detectives W. Huff and J. Nguyen picked the case up under incident number 138842724. And honestly, they did not have to dig hard for any of it. They had the surveillance video, the 2 women from the bus stop, the neighbor who heard the death threat and watched him post in the parking lot the night before, and a whole apartment complex full of people who had seen this man at that door plenty of times before. Within hours, the entire search was already over because Ruffin reached out to officers from the HPD North Belt Patrol Division Tactical Unit and told them he wanted to turn himself in and talk to detectives. He walked into the station, sat down with the homicide team, and gave a statement that has never been made public. Shortly after, the Harris County District Attorney's Office charged him with murder, while prosecutors asked the court to give him no bond at all.
Well, a man accused of killing a woman in front of her own children has turned himself in. Howard Ruffin, who you see right there on your screen, is now charged with murder for the shooting in Northwest Houston on Wednesday. He was supposed to face a judge today on a separate assault charge involving the same victim, identified in court documents as Jacqueline Wilson. Neighbors say Wilson and Ruffin were in a relationship.
Catch that last line, because it is the whole case wrapped in one sentence.
On the same day he turned himself in for killing her, he was already scheduled to stand in a courtroom for beating her. The murder case landed right back in the 180th State District Court, the same court that had him standing there 1 week earlier and left his bond sitting at $7,500.
September 25th, Ruffin appears in the 180th, Judge Deshaun Jones. He remains on the $7,500 bond he posted in Maverick County and walks out of jail on September 30th. 2 days later, Jacqueline is dead.
Jacqueline's murder could have been prevented.
Oh, absolutely. That's just another example of counties not talking to each other. And that decision probably cost Jacqueline her life.
This could have been prevented. I could have still had my daughter. Their kids could have still had their mother.
I shouldn't be sitting here right now. Jacqueline should be here.
Yes. Yes.
Denise Bibbs did not hold anything back after that, saying the system failed her daughter and that this could have been prevented and that her daughter should still be alive. She talked about how everybody dropped the ball, about 2 counties that never talked to each other, and about a low bond handed to a man whose entire record was built on hurting women. She also said she planned to be in that courtroom for every single date because she wanted him to see her face and her husband's face every time he walks in there. She is the one raising those 4 children now. Advocates jumped on it too, and Andy Cahan out of Crime Stoppers, along with Amy Smith from the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, used the case to ask the questions nobody had a good answer for. Where was this man for 16 months? Who was supposed to be watching him? What were the conditions on that bond? And who was checking that he followed them?
16 months pass. Harris County has no idea Ruffin was even out on bond.
Where was he during that time? Who was supervising him? Who was making sure he was following the conditions of his bond? And what were the conditions of his bond?
It got loud enough that in May of 2025, the governor of Texas pulled the case into the bail fight himself, with Greg Abbott posting that convicted felon Howard Ruffin assaulted his girlfriend, Jacqueline Wilson, and was granted a $7,500 bond, and that 2 days after being released from jail, he shot and killed her in front of her kids, adding that her death could have been prevented if he had been kept behind bars.
On tonight's Breaking Bond, a 32-year-old mother of 4 was murdered, allegedly by her 39-year-old boyfriend, and her mother blames a Harris County judge.
And I said, did Howard Ruffin kill my daughter?
There wasn't any doubt in your mind that Howard was involved.
No doubt in my mind.
What made you so sure?
Because my daughter has never been in a relationship that bad before.
Howard Ruffin has a lengthy criminal history.
Multiple convictions for aggravated assault, all involving dating relationships.
As of the latest public information, Ruffin is charged with 1 felony count of murder and faces up to life in prison if a jury convicts him, and there is no verdict, no plea, and no final outcome reported anywhere. So hold that thought for me. A man with a documented history of beating women got a low bond, walked out, and was killed within days, and everybody agreed afterward that the system missed it. Now, let me show you what happens when the system does not just miss it, but actually watches a man commit a whole separate crime on video and still says nothing. Let's move to Chatham Green Village in Arlington, Texas. And by every account, it was a quiet complex, the kind of place where people knew each other's cars. Monique Elaine Smith Glenn was 29 years old, born on the 29th of June, 1994 in Fort Worth, and she came up in a tight family behind her mother, Erica Gibson, with a house full of siblings. She went through Fort Worth schools and graduated from Lamar High School. She got a phlebotomy certification in Arlington and worked as a caregiver at Bethesda Gardens Assisted Living, which means she spent her days taking care of elderly people who could not take care of themselves. Her coworkers talked about her kindness and about a laugh you could hear all the way down the hall. Monique took her faith seriously. She was into gospel songs, Yolanda Adams and Tasha Cobbs Leonard. She played volleyball, loved to shop, cooked, and kept her place decorated. She was a mother of 3 beautiful kids, Camrian, King, and Camaria, whom everybody called KK. And on the 6th of February 2022, she married Jarrell Drayon Glenn. Jarrell was 31, born the 2nd of June, 1992, and raised around Arlington. And in the streets, they knew him as Hood Rich, or Jick.
I always like talking, cuz. If it ain't about this, I don't want to talk, cuz. I'm just chill, stay out the way, trying to beat this case and get these blue strips. I got some old honey.
His family and his friends describe a man who was really there for his kids and locked in on his marriage. But let's keep it 100. He was not working a regular job. He was in the street, and his social media stayed full of cash and jewelry. He also had history behind him. Back in 2019, he was charged with capital murder in the shooting death of a man named Brian Veramontes during a recording session at an Arlington apartment, and he was freed in 2024. This tells you the case either dropped or he beat it, though nobody ever publicly laid out how it ended. Then there is the man who had nothing to do with any of that. Shannon O'Shea Jones was 29, and he was a barber, not a street guy or somebody with a file. He started cutting hair at 10 years old, practicing on his mother's dolls. He stayed with it his whole life until he finally got his license in November of 2023, only about 2 months before he died. He was building a mobile barber business so he could go to people instead of making people come to him. He was the youngest son of Paula Johnson, and the way she talks about him tells you everything, because he gave free haircuts to school kids and to families where one parent was holding it down alone.
He had an appointment. The guy had an appointment, so Shannon goes to cut his hair. And in the midst of that, something was going on, and he was leaving. But I can't confirm that, because, like I said, I wasn't there. Hope they have some time to reflect on what they did and what they took from us.
People in Arlington called him a community servant. He barbecued for everybody, was funny and loud in a good way, and had 2 babies at home. He had a 5-year-old son and a daughter who was only a couple of months old, and he was getting ready to propose to their mother.
On the evening of the 25th of January, 2024, Shannon Jones drove over to the Glen apartment to cut somebody's hair. Now, here comes the man with the gun. Larry Dwayne Reed was 29, born around 1995, raised in Arlington, and in the street, they called him Crip. Just like Ruffin, there is basically nothing about his life outside of crime. No school records, jobs, or family details. In June of 2012, when Reed was 17 years old, there was a house party on Geraldine Court in Arlington where a fight jumped off. Reed was handed a gun and he fired it, killing an 18-year-old named Obeth Hernandez and wounding a 21-year-old man. He pleaded guilty to murder in 2014 and waived his right to a jury. Tarrant County gave him 11 years for taking that boy's life, which came out to about 9 years once they credited him for time already served. While he was locked up, in March of 2021, he beat his cellmate down, and then he did the thing that turned a prison fight into a statewide embarrassment. He pulled out a contraband cell phone he was never supposed to have and live-streamed himself on Facebook, shirtless and gloating, standing over the man while he was still on the ground, hurting.
The video is from March 2021 and recently shared with WFAA. Larry Reed is seen gloating, shirtless, over his cellmate in prison as he writhes in pain on the ground. Texas prison officials say Reed had just beat up his cellmate and live-streamed some of it to Facebook via an illegal cell phone. Reed serving an 11-year sentence for murder when this video was taken.
In Texas, having a phone in prison is not a slap on the wrist. It is a third-degree felony. And Sherry Siegel, who spent 17 years working as a correctional officer inside that same prison system, broke down for WFAA exactly what that should have meant.
The ball got dropped.
Sherry Siegel has spent 17 years as a correctional officer in the Texas prison system and says having a cell phone in prison is a third-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in jail. She says the state had sufficient evidence in their hands to elongate Reed's sentence, potentially preventing those killings.
His cell phones are not something that you can just walk down to the commissary and get.
2 to 10 more years on top of what he was already serving, and the state had the proof sitting right in their hands because the man filmed it himself and put it on the internet for the whole world. So, what came of it? The Texas Department of Criminal Justice investigated and sent it to the Office of Inspector General. That office was supposed to build a case and hand it to the Special Prosecution Unit, which is the office that handles crimes committed behind bars. That unit told WFAA they never received a case involving Reed at all, which means the whole thing died inside the Inspector General's office and never went anywhere.
But WFAA learned Monday that Reed never faced any penalty for this. A Texas Department of Criminal Justice official told our news desk Reed illegally had a cell phone, that an investigation was done and sent to the Office of Inspector General, who would build a case for the agency's Special Prosecution Unit, which tries crimes behind bars. But an official for that unit told us it never received a case involving Reed ever, signaling the investigation never made it beyond the Office of the Inspector General. Reed had a flat discharge last December.
Reed just got some internal discipline and nothing else, and walked out on a flat discharge on the 13th of December 2023. A flat discharge means his time was completely finished, so there was no parole officer, no supervision, and nobody checking in on him at all, just free and clear. Sherry Siegel, the woman who spent 17 years inside that system, could barely put it into words.
I don't know, I'm almost at a loss for words. To me, it just doesn't make sense. That's a black eye for the agency.
We've contacted the Office of Inspector General several times asking for more information about this incident, and we are still waiting to hear back.
A man convicted of murder committed a brand new felony on camera, uploaded the proof himself, and the state of Texas somehow lost the paperwork on it. He had 45 days of freedom before he walked into an apartment full of people. Let's fast forward to the 25th of January 2024, around 8:30 at night, at a second-floor apartment on Chatham Green Lane near West Arbrook Boulevard in Arlington. Inside that apartment, you had Monique home from work, along with Jarrell, plus Shannon Jones with his clippers there for the haircut, and 2 young children. Neighbors said the first thing they heard was a loud bang, not a shot, but a bang, and that was the door coming in. Reed kicked it in, and the apartment showed clear signs of forced entry when police worked the scene. He went after Jarrell first over a disagreement between the two of them. Reed knew Jarrell, which is the piece that makes this personal instead of random. He shot Jarrell first, catching him in the leg to start with, and then he kept going, shooting Monique, and then shooting Shannon Jones, a barber who had walked in there with a cape and clippers and nothing else. Then he came back out, dressed in all black, and was gone. The neighbors who heard it said they heard the bang, then the shots, and then they saw a man in dark clothes leaving the building. When Arlington officers arrived, Shannon Jones was dead in the doorway and never even made it out the entryway. Monique was dead inside from a gunshot wound to the neck, and Jarrell was alive inside but shot multiple times, and he was rushed to the hospital where he died. The 2 children were not physically touched, not a scratch on either one of them, and they were released to family members afterward. Nothing was taken out of the apartment, and that detail matters because it kills the robbery theory outright. So whatever brought Larry Reed through that door was not money sitting on a table. Arlington police did say they found evidence of drug activity at the scene and tied the attack to what they called high-risk drug activity, rather than calling it a straight revenge killing. It is a man who knew another man, a disagreement between the two of them, and a lifestyle around both of them that made it easy for that disagreement to turn into a doorway full of bodies. There is also the piece where Jarrell was posting cash and jewelry on social media, and reporting notes that may have helped draw attention his way. Which is not blaming him for his own death, but is just being honest about how that works. Reed did not stick around Texas either. Arlington police worked the case as tips came in and put Reed's picture in a photo lineup in front of witnesses who picked him right out. On the 2nd of February, they issued a capital murder warrant while telling the public he was armed and dangerous with ties out in Mississippi. 4 days later, on the 6th of February, U.S. Marshals, along with Arlington PD and Mississippi authorities, ran down an address on Central Street in Greenville, Mississippi, and found Reed hiding up in the attic. They called him out. He came down without a fight and got booked into the Washington County Jail while Texas came to get him.
Kind of a crazy story, Kara. 29-year-old Larry Reed was only a free man for a couple of weeks by the time he was caught, arrested, and put back in jail for a triple murder that Arlington police say he is responsible for right here in the city. Now, Larry Reed is accused of murdering 3 people at an apartment complex in the 3500 block of Chatham Green Lane in late January. Police say he shot and killed 29-year-old Monique Smith, 29-year-old Shannon Jones, and an unnamed 31-year-old. Then he ran off to Mississippi. Then 12 days later, police there caught him, and now he will be extradited back to North Texas. Meanwhile, Shannon Jones's family is preparing his funeral. They say the state of Texas failed them by giving Reed a light sentence for previous crimes he committed, 11 years for murder back in 2012.
I just feel like they slapped him on the wrist and told him, okay, go to timeout. And when timeout is over with, you just come back here. It doesn't fix me. It doesn't fix my family.
By the middle of February, he was sitting in the Lon Evans Correction Center in Tarrant County, facing capital murder, which in Texas means life with no parole or the death penalty. Then the case went quiet, because as of early 2026, searches through Tarrant County dockets turned up no trial date, no verdict, and no plea. So he's in custody, and the case looks like it is still just sitting there. Cases like his stretch out for years, so that by itself is not strange, but for 3 families waiting on an answer, years are years. Now, if you think a man walking out of prison for murder and killing again right away is some one-off situation in Texas, I need you to meet the ghost that hangs over every single parole decision in that state. Kenneth McDuff was born in 1946 in Rosebud, Texas, and he committed 12 burglaries at 18 years old and was paroled after a single year. In August of 1966, he and another man kidnapped 3 teenagers off a baseball field: Robert Brand, who was 17, Mark Dunham, who was 15, and Edna Louise Sullivan, who was 16. He shot the 2 boys in the trunk of a car. Then he violated and choked the girl with a broomstick, which is how Texas ended up calling him the broomstick murderer.
And it really bothered the community. I still remember it because I think it's the worst thing I ever saw. Really, when you come right down to it. I mean, I saw those bodies, and when you're on the police beat, you see a lot of death. But I'd never seen anything that matched the cruelty of what McDuff did. It's just, and I hope I never do see it again.
He got 3 death sentences in 1968, and then a Supreme Court ruling in 1972 knocked death sentences down across the whole country, and his became life instead. Then Texas prisons got too crowded, and a federal lawsuit forced the state to make room. So parole boards started pushing bodies out the door on quotas, releasing as many as 750 people a week. McDuff's family was accused of paying officials off, part of a bribery scandal that ended with parole board members getting convicted themselves.
McDuff, with his, quote, loving parents, decided that the best way to get him out was to offer a cash bribe to a parole commissioner. It just shows you the depths of what McDuff's family was trying to do to get him.
They paroled him in 1989 as one of 127 murderers released that year, and he violated his parole by making death threats. He went back to jail, and they paroled him again in 1990. He violated again, so they paroled him a 3rd time in 1991. 3 separate times Texas opened that gate for him. What he did out here is a horror list. He murdered Seraphia Parker in October of 1989, then Brenda Thompson and Regina Moore in October of 1991, then Colleen Reed that December, then Valencia Joshua in February of that same year. He bragged of as many as 14 people, and investigators believe at least 9. He ran to Kansas City under a fake name, but somebody recognized him from America's Most Wanted, and the feds picked him up on the 4th of May, 1992, with an arrest team that included the sons of the men who had arrested him back in 1966.
In those days, when there was an important prisoner to be transferred to the Fort Worth jail, Sheriff Lon Evans would generally drive down in a patrol car with his deputy, Earl Brown, who was the number 2 guy in the sheriff's department, and bring them back himself. And on this particular case, I had asked him if I could go with him to pick up these people after this story broke. And so we did drive down there. On the way back, and we were in the car for about 2.5 hours with McDuff. He expressed no interest in any conversation about anything. At one point, the only thing, when people would ask him a question, he would just nod or act like he was asleep, or I've never seen anybody quite like him. He showed no remorse. He showed no hesitancy about any of it. He just sat there and said he wanted to see a lawyer. And I came to realize I had never seen anyone like this or dealt, and I'd been on the police beat for a long time at that point. He was a monster. He was a monster. I don't think he had any conscience, and I remember somebody saying at the time, if there was ever a reason for the death penalty, it was Kenneth Allen McDuff. He personified that, and it just made you feel uneasy, really, to be around him.
He was convicted of Melissa Northrup's murder in 1993 and sentenced to death, making him the only man in Texas ever handed a death sentence 3 separate times. The state executed him on the 17th of November, 1998.
Unless the convicted killer gets a final reprieve, today will be his time to go. But Jack Brand wishes the electric chair was waiting for McDuff at the end of his death.
That case forced real change in Texas, bringing stricter parole for violent offenders, an end to mandatory early releases, and better monitoring on the way out. Andy Cahan, the same victims advocate who spoke up about Jacqueline Wilson's case decades later, called McDuff a killing machine.
They knowingly released a mass murderer multiple times back to the community, and they knew it, and they looked the other way.
Which is exactly what makes Larry Reed's file so hard to swallow, because Texas already learned this lesson once and paid for it in blood. And still, a man doing time for murder committed a filmed felony inside a state prison and walked out on a flat discharge with nobody watching him at all. Well, let's move to a different state and see the same script play out again. Mariah Rosanna Samuels was 34 years old, born on the 30th of August, 1991 at 5:21 in the morning. Her mother, Benita Lynn Adams, described her daughter's conception as something rooted in love. She had 2 sisters, Selena Owens and Simone Hunter, and the 3 of them were close in that way where you already know all the sisters are pulling up to everything. Her father, William Samuels, owned a duplex on Russell Avenue North in the Willard Hay neighborhood of North Minneapolis, and rented the other unit to his daughter. Remember that address, because it is where this ends. Mariah had 2 sons, and every single person who talks about her leads with them, because her family called her a boy mom, and one of those boys was about 11 years old. She was a dog groomer running her own business called Clean Paws, and kept 4 cats and 2 lizards in her own home. Animals were totally her thing.
Gonna lie, it's low-key scary watching you from afar getting fine and healing from everything you done been through. I'm looking at you like, dang!
Her people describe her as sweet, outgoing, uplifting, strong-willed, sarcastic when she feels like it, and never judgmental. She loved water, butterflies, trips to the family cabin, and purple was her favorite color. The Hennepin County attorney summed her up in one stretch that says it all of it.
Mariah should be alive, doing what she loved to do, spending time with her family, taking care of the animals she loved so dearly. Mariah was a proud, loving mother to 2 sons. She was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, and a friend who enjoyed trips to the family cabin. Her family described Mariah as a gentle spirit who carried adulthood with grace but never let go of the childlike joys of life.
Now the man. David Eugene Wright was born on the 1st of October, 1974, which made him 50 years old when he met Mariah, and he was living on James Avenue North in Minneapolis.
Let me tell you something to all you who don't have an identity and who is upset about mine. Find yourself. This time.
Like the other 2 men in this video, his public life is basically just a rap sheet. Start back in 2003, when Wright was charged with a second-degree domestic assault case in Hennepin County. After a breakup, he pointed a stolen handgun at his then-girlfriend and at a teenager who was standing there with her, and when that teenager tried to call 911, he smashed the phone, and he threatened to shoot both of them. He went to prison behind that one. Hold on to it because it is the same exact movie he ran 22 years later, with a breakup, a gun, threats, and somebody stopping a call for help. In 2006, he picked up a 5th-degree drug felony, which under both Minnesota and federal law meant he could never legally touch a firearm again for the rest of his life. And stacked around all of that were 2 aggravated robberies, property damage, check forgery, misdemeanor assault, identity theft, contempt of court, disorderly conduct, and illegal weapon possession. Then, in 2009, the federal government took him, and he pleaded guilty to being a felon in possession of a firearm. Because he already had 3 serious felonies behind him, a federal law called the Armed Career Criminal Act kicked in, and that law forces a minimum sentence, so he got 180 months, which is 15 years. He appealed it, arguing about whether those 2 robberies should count as separate crimes, and the courts said they did. He came home less than a year before he met Mariah, and he was still on federal supervision at the time, still barred by law from touching a gun or even a single bullet. They dated for about 7 months, and around the 21st of August 2025, she called him on the phone and ended it. You can bet that she was dead in 3 weeks. That same evening, he pulled up to her father's duplex claiming he was dropping off a gift, and when he found out that she was not home, he started calling and texting her from outside the house. He told her he was going to blow up that house, the same house where her father lived. The texts from that stretch are laid out in the criminal complaint, and they read like a countdown with, "If you don't bring your home right now, I'm about to blow this down," and "Man, someone gonna die tonight." All of it came out of jealousy because he had it in his head that she was back with a former partner. Then he tracked her down, figuring out she was a few blocks away at her ex-partner's house, dropping her 11-year-old son off, and he drove straight there. When she stepped outside, he came at her with a gun in his hand, yelling at her, beating her in the face and upper body with that pistol and with his hand. He threw her against a fence and grabbed at her throat with his free hand while he was still holding the gun. He threatened to shoot her and anybody left inside that house and threatened to bust her car windows out with the firearm. She was left with a knot on her head, scratches and bruises, and she told police she took every word of it seriously. A camera nearby recorded the entire assault. Her best friend was on FaceTime with her and watched it happen live before giving police a statement about it, and there were texts and phone records sitting on top of all that.
So put it together. Video, an eyewitness, injuries on her body, threats in writing, hands around her neck, a gun, and a suspect who already had a domestic assault conviction for doing almost the same thing. Wright left before officers pulled up, and this is where Minneapolis lost the plot completely.
The risk assessment on this case flagged him hard because he had access to guns, he had shown up at her workplace before, and had threatened to kill her family. On top of that, trying to choke somebody is one of the strongest warning signs there is that a man will eventually kill a woman, and everybody who works in that field knows it. Minneapolis police did not assign an investigator to the case. It got filed as gone on arrival, which just means the suspect left before police got there, and then it got dropped low in a backlog and slid down even further after Mariah did not call a domestic violence advocate back. At that time, the entire domestic assault unit had about 5 investigators, when it used to have around 12 back in 2019, and there were dozens of cases sitting in that pile, with nobody assigned to them. The case was never even sent over to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for them to look at charges. Police later said Mariah did not want to press charges, but her relatives said flat out that she was cooperating. No paperwork was ever filed documenting that she refused, and the county attorney's office confirmed they never got any message saying she was against it. Here is what people miss on that, too. A victim does not have to want charges for a case to be chargeable, and if the evidence stands on its own, then it stands. There was video. What she did do was protect herself, the legal way. On the 26th of August, a Hennepin County domestic violence advocate came out to her home and helped her file for an order for protection, covering both her and her son. That petition laid out the breakup, the threat to blow up the house, the tracking, the pistol whipping, and his hands on her throat. A judge signed it on the 27th. It barred all contact with no exceptions, and Wright was handed his copy on the 29th of August. She had the paper, the video, and the phone records, and she had made the calls. On the 14th of September 2025, around 3:30 in the morning, David Wright started texting her, a whole flurry of them, accusing her of being with another man. He tried calling her too, and every one of those contacts was a crime because that order had been active for over 2 weeks and he had already been served with it. At 5:14 in the morning, she called 911. 2 Minneapolis officers came out to the address where she was staying, and she showed Officer Weber the messages on her phone, telling him she believed Wright had already been to that property and asking him to check her vehicle because she thought somebody had messed with it. She told him there was no other way he would have known for sure that she was there. The whole interaction lasted a little over 4 minutes. Officer Weber's written report said she did not appear scared or frightened, that she said she felt safe and that Wright would not know the address. But the body camera footage tells a completely different story, and Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty laid it out for everybody.
The officer who responded to Mariah's call wrote in his report that Mariah told him she felt safe. But the video from the officer's body cam reveals that she never said that. The look of resignation on Mariah's face when the officer said he was leaving is something I will never forget. That is something that was captured on body cam. Mariah was afraid and said repeatedly that David Wright would kill her. And she took action and sought help and protection from our system, but it failed her.
She never said she felt safe. She said the opposite, telling them over and over that this man was going to kill her. And what is sitting on that footage forever is her face the moment the officer told her he was leaving. Nobody offered her any domestic violence resources. He said a report would be written, but couldn't promise how fast anything would follow it. He gave the car a quick look and then drove off. Around 7:37 that morning, Mariah got on Facebook and posted the surveillance video of the August 21st assault, along with screenshots of the harassing texts. Roughly 3 to 5 minutes later, 911 lines lit up and the ShotSpotter system picked up about a dozen gunshots on Russell Avenue North at her father's duplex in her own front yard. Wright rode up on a bicycle, and prosecutors argued he had been sitting out there for around 2 hours. He shot her at close range while she was in or near her Jeep Compass, firing through the window, opening the door, and firing again. One witness upstairs heard about 5 shots, then a pause, then screaming, then more gunfire. While another witness described a man with shoulder-length dreadlocks firing at point-blank range. He hit her about 10 times. Investigators recovered 15 spent shell casings, and the Jeep had gunshot damage on both the driver's side and the passenger side.
Then he pulled at her body and tried to take the Jeep. However, when he could not get it moving, he grabbed his bicycle back off the vehicle and rode away while tucking the gun into his pocket.
Neighborhood cameras caught a man matching him in a long-sleeve shirt or blue sweatshirt, looking rattled and putting something in his pocket right after the shots. Officers got there around 7:50 and found Mariah Samuels on the ground beside the open driver's door with multiple gunshot wounds to her upper body, and she was pronounced dead right there in front of her father's house. Family was already on the scene, and when officers asked one of her sons whether his mother had problems with anybody, that child gave them one word: David. They arrested Wright the next day, the 15th of September, over in Anoka, and his own federal probation officer looked at the surveillance video and confirmed it was him. In a recorded jail interview, he told officers he was not going to fight the situation and that this was not going to be a hard-fought case. Then he told them to go read the text messages between him and Mariah and said they would understand why he did it.
I am absolutely ecstatic that he is now facing first-degree murder charges. He deserves that.
The family of Mariah Samuels gathered outside the Hennepin County Government Center with mixed emotions.
It's a bittersweet moment because this is what it should have been from the get-go.
They are pleased the charges against David Wright have been upgraded to first-degree murder, but sad and frustrated that Mariah's death was not prevented.
The steps that were taken should have resulted in an arrest. It should have resulted in a warrant. It should have resulted in David not coming out of jail for the rest of his life.
On the morning of September 14th, Mariah's last post on Facebook, she vented about Wright stalking her and police doing nothing but serving him with an order for protection. 5 minutes after that post, court papers say Wright fired 12 shots at Mariah, killing her by her front door. The amended criminal complaint adds several details about Wright's abusive past, including slamming the door on Mariah, pistol whipping her, threatening her, including saying someone's going to die tonight. And it lays out his control and jealousy, as well as an implicit confession, allegedly telling police if they review text messages between him and Mariah, they'd understand why he did this.
He was charged with second-degree murder and illegal firearms possession at first, and then in late November of 2025, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office upgraded it, adding first-degree premeditated murder and first-degree murder while committing domestic abuse with a past pattern of domestic abuse. A grand jury made it official in December, and that 2003 gun-pointing conviction after a breakup was the past pattern they used. The trial ran multiple weeks into April of 2026, and then Wright did something nobody saw coming, because he took the stand and admitted all of it. He said he had been sitting there thinking about the relationship when he saw her drive past heading toward her house, so he got on a bicycle and rode to her, and he described shooting through the car window, pulling her body out, trying to drive off in her own car, and then leaving on the bike. He said he could not remember how many times he fired, and when they asked what was in his head as he rode away, he said he was not going back to jail. The strategy was to admit to second-degree murder while fighting the premeditation, arguing it was an impulsive reaction instead of a plan. That fell apart under cross-examination when David got uncooperative and actually stood up and walked off the witness stand, forcing the judge to call a recess. Mariah's sister, Simone Hunter, could not process what she had just watched.
Among just in disbelief that someone could get up on the stand, say that they shot through the window, went around the other side, shot her while she was still screaming, and let her fall to the ground. I was baffled that he could be so smug the entire trial. So knowing that he was convicted guilty on every charge, he got exactly what he deserved. And I'm hoping the judge's sentence will be heavy and long. And I truly do not hope he just should never see the light of day again. He's a dangerous person.
The jury took less than 3 hours to come back guilty on everything in front of them.
On September 14th, 2025, Mariah Samuels was taken from her family, her loved ones, and her community in a terrible act of domestic violence. Today, a Hennepin County jury convicted David Wright of first-degree premeditated murder and first-degree murder past pattern of domestic violence. He will be sentenced to life without parole this Friday, April 17th at 10 a.m., after Ms. Samuel's family has the opportunity to tell the judge how Mariah's loss has impacted them.
Sentencing was set for Friday, the 17th of April, and family flew in from out of town to watch this man get taken away for good, but he refused to come out of his cell.
He's just refusing to attend the hearing.
Again, we did discuss this issue in chambers and are making that request based on Mr. Wright's inability to appear today.
His lawyers would not explain why, saying only that he was unable to attend, and the state was not having any of it.
The state would just say, for the record, there is no inability to appear today. He was here for the verdict. He was here every day at trial. This is utter and pure manipulation.
And the least that they could have done is demanded that he come over here in shackles like the monster that he is.
Your Honor, the state is requesting the court issue a drag order and make the defendant come over.
Prosecutors asked the judge for an order to physically bring him in, but Judge Mark Kappelhoff pointed to safety inside the courtroom and pushed the whole thing to Monday instead, and the family broke down right there in the room.
So typical for them to try to control the narrative. That's exactly what he did, is control the narrative.
I'm astounded by Hennepin County's judge. I really am.
We were ready and we had plans to celebrate justice being served. But yet again, we have been failed by this system. Yet again, we have to go home and hold each other up because the system continuously smacks us in the face.
On Monday, the 20th of April, he strolled in on his own with no shackles on him at all. The room was full of purple that day, purple shirts with her face on them, and shirts that read "Justice for Mariah," and a slideshow of her played through the room with childhood pictures, a picture of her dressed as a butterfly, and pictures with her son. Then one sister stood up and made a point about that Friday that nobody in that courtroom is ever going to forget.
Blindsided by your decision, because I thought to myself, the same way he dragged my sister out of her vehicle after he wounded her body with 21 shots, how come you couldn't drag him up here?
And the least that they could have done is demanded that he come over here in shackles like the monster that he is.
He dragged her sister out of her own vehicle, but the court could not drag him 50 feet down a hallway. Some of the family forgave him out loud, saying they refused to let him hold that kind of power over them, while others said they could not find the word justice anywhere inside themselves, because real justice would have been him sitting in a cell back in August, and one relative said he deserved 3 life sentences. Then Wright spoke.
Nothing that Mariah did justifies what I did. That's why I got on the stand and said what I said, because I know I did wrong. I think about Mariah still every day. Even though I know it might not be accepted, I apologize for my actions. And I'm upset. I got coming with no problem.
Then Judge Kappelhoff said the thing that needed saying.
You committed a premeditated, senseless, and brutal murder of Mariah Samuels. You planned her murder, you laid in wait for her, and you shot her to death while she sat helpless in her car. All because she was a strong and confident woman who had decided to end her relationship with you 3 weeks earlier. She told you no, and you couldn't accept that, so you killed her. Tragic, senseless, and cruel are the only words that come to mind to describe this murder.
She told him no, and he could not accept it.
Because of you, 2 teenage boys will grow up without their mother. Mariah's father, mother, sister, friends, and family members will never be able to hug or see her brilliant smile again.
He got life in prison with no release and no parole, plus 364 days running at the same time on the gun count, a $50 fine, a $75 surcharge, a $3 library fee, and $7,500 owed back to the family to be paid out of prison wages.
$7,500. That is the exact same number as Howard Ruffin's bond down in Texas. So in one case, it was the price of a woman's life on the way in, and in this one, it is the price of a life on the way out. Afterward, the family stood in the lobby of the Hennepin County Government Center and prayed together in a circle. But the part that should keep you up is what came out next, because Moriarty said the failures with Minneapolis police were obvious. They brought up a public records request that had just gone out about how long that department was taking to answer 911 calls.
There were calls, these are 911 calls, an active domestic violence assault in progress, where people had to wait 43 minutes, 88 minutes. That is unacceptable. I cannot imagine being in a position where I am calling law enforcement for help when I'm being actively assaulted, where it takes that long to respond. So
Chief Brian O'Hara ordered a full review of how the case was handled and required retraining across the whole department on domestic violence, along with a rule change forcing officers to actually ask people about their safety and then act on whatever answer they get. A Star Tribune investigation had already laid out the understaffing, the backlog, and the low follow-up rates before any of that. Mariah Samuels was counted as the 17th confirmed intimate partner homicide victim in Minnesota in 2025. So, look at all three of them side by side. Jacqueline Wilson's killer had a felony warrant on him, a documented choking, a prior conviction and a bond nobody raised, and 2 counties that never bothered to talk to each other about him. Larry Reed committed a filmed felony inside a Texas prison on a phone he was not supposed to have, and the paperwork died quietly in an office. David Wright pistol-whipped a woman on camera with an eyewitness watching live on FaceTime, and no investigator was ever assigned to it. Moriarty said the one sentence that ties all of this together, and it is the thing you should walk away holding.
She did everything we ask people who experience domestic violence to do, including calling the police for help shortly before she was killed.
She did everything right, and so did Jacqueline, while Monique, Jarrell, and Shannon never got a chance to do anything at all, because a man the state should still be holding kicked their door in instead. Now, if you've never left a comment on any story I've shared on this channel, this is the one I'd love to hear your thoughts on. Your comment could help another mother, another family, or someone facing a similar situation.